The pack alpha tested every male for his daughter. The human mechanic made him submit. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The maintenance bay of Outpost 17 reeked of hydraulic fluid and burnt circuits, a smell that had become as familiar to Ethan Cole as his own breath. He'd been fixing the broken machinery of 100 different species for 3 years now, his hands perpetually stained with grease, his jumpsuit a patchwork of repairs. Nobody on this frontier station paid much attention to the human mechanic in Bay 7, and that was exactly how Ethan liked it. But that was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The Vorith had arrived on the station 6 months ago, and everyone knew to give them space. They were massive wolf-like beings, standing nearly 8 feet tall on digitigrade legs, covered in thick fur that ranged from silver to black, with eyes that glowed amber in low light. They moved with predatory grace, their society built on pack hierarchies and ritual combat. The Vorith commanded respect through strength, and their reputation for ferocity in battle had spread across 3 sectors. Ethan was elbow-deep in a malfunctioning plasma coupling when he first saw her. Kira, daughter of Pack Alpha Draven, had wandered into his bay following the acrid smell of an electrical fire. She was different from the other Vorith he'd glimpsed in passing. Her fur was a rare silver white, marked with darker patterns along her spine, and her eyes held an intelligence that seemed to pierce right through his usual defenses. She was young by Vorith standards, but already stood 7 feet tall with a lean, muscular build that spoke of countless hours of combat training. Ethan looked up from his work, wiping sweat from his forehead and leaving another grease smear. He said nothing at first, just raised an eyebrow in silent question. Kira stepped closer, her clawed feet clicking on the metal floor. She spoke in accented but clear standard Galactic, her voice carrying a growling undertone that was characteristic of her species. My father's ceremonial armor has a malfunction in the power distribution system. The usual technicians refuse to work on it. They fear touching something so personal to the Pack Alpha. Ethan pulled himself out from under the machinery and stood, though even at his full height of 6 feet, he barely reached her shoulder. He grabbed a rag and made a futile attempt to clean his hands. Armor's just metal and circuits. I don't care whose it is. Bring it by tomorrow morning. Something flickered in Kira's eyes, surprise maybe, or curiosity. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that would have made most beings uncomfortable. You do not fear my father? Ethan shrugged and turned back to his work. Never met him. But fear doesn't fix broken equipment. Either I can repair it or I can't. The status of the owner doesn't change the job. Over the following weeks, Kira became a regular visitor to Base 7. She brought not just her father's armor, but various other pieces of Vorith technology that needed repair. Ethan came to appreciate her practical approach to problems. Unlike many of the station's inhabitants, she didn't waste time with elaborate social protocols or pointless small talk. She described the malfunction, he fixed it, and they'd end up in long conversations about engineering principles, pack dynamics, and the fundamental differences between their species. One evening, as the station's artificial day cycle dimmed to night mode, Kira arrived at the bay looking troubled. Her ears were flat against her skull, and her tail hung low. Ethan had learned enough about Vorith body language to recognize distress. He set down his tools and gestured to a relatively clean workbench. Want to talk about it? Kira settled onto the bench with fluid grace, her claws clicking against the metal. My father has declared it is time for me to choose a mate. He said this while staring at the wall, clearly uncomfortable with the personal nature of the conversation. Ethan grabbed 2 containers of the terrible station coffee and offered her one. She developed a taste for it despite her species' usual preference for raw meat-based drinks. Congratulations? Kira's lips pulled back, revealing impressive fangs and what Ethan had learned was not a threat display but a bitter smile. You do not understand. In Vorith culture, a Pack Alpha's daughter does not simply choose. My father must test every potential mate. He must ensure they are worthy of the bloodline. Ethan sipped his coffee, processing this information. What kind of tests? Combat trials, she said quietly. Displays of strength, endurance, tactical thinking. My father has defeated every single male who has approached him. 17 challenges in the past month alone. He breaks them, humiliates them, sends them away with their pride shattered. That seems counterproductive if you actually want to find someone. Kira's ears perked up slightly. That is what I have tried to tell him. But he is Pack Alpha. His word is law. She paused, her glowing eyes meeting Ethan's. I think part of him does not want me to mate at all. I am his only daughter. He trained me as he would a son, taught me strategy and combat. I lead warriors in battle. The thought of losing me to some male he deems unworthy fills him with rage. Ethan leaned back against his workbench, considering. What do you want? No one had ever asked her that. The surprise was evident on her face. I want a mate who sees me as an equal. Someone who values my mind as much as my bloodline. Someone who does not cower before my father's reputation. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I want what my parents had before my mother died. Partnership. Respect. Love. The conversation shifted after that night. Kira came to the bay more frequently, often bringing no broken equipment at all. They talked about everything from xenobiology to philosophy. Ethan told her about Earth, about growing up on a planet with one dominant sapient species, about the strange loneliness of being one of the few humans this far out in the frontier. Kira spoke of pack bonds, of the weight of legacy, of feeling trapped between duty and desire. It was another 3 weeks before Ethan realized what was happening. He was lying under a transport engine, trying to coax a stubborn coupling into place, when Kira said something that made his hands freeze on the wrench. I have told my father about you. Ethan slid out from under the engine, grease smeared across his face. You what? I told him there is a male I wish him to test. Her voice was steady, but her tail swished back and forth with nervous energy. Ethan sat up, his mind racing. Kira, I'm human. I'm not even the same species. She knelt down beside him, bringing her face level with his. Her amber eyes were intense, unwavering. Does that change how we talk? Does it change how you see me? You are the first male who has ever treated me as more than the Pack Alpha's daughter. You debate with me. You challenge my ideas. You fix things because they are broken, not because you want to gain favor with my bloodline. This is insane, Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. Your father will kill me. My father will test you, Kira corrected. And I believe you will surprise him. You surprise me constantly, Ethan Cole. You are small by Vorth standards, yes. You have no claws, no fangs, no thick fur to protect you. But you have something I have never seen in any of the males my father has tested. What's that? You are unimpressed by displays of dominance. You solve problems instead of trying to overpower them. And you are stubborn beyond reason. She made that same fanged smile. Very Vorth qualities, in their own way. Ethan stood up, pacing the length of the bay. This is crazy. I fix engines. I'm not a warrior. Kira rose as well, her full height, making Ethan crane his neck to maintain eye contact. The Vorth do not only value physical strength. That is a misconception other species have about us. We value strength of will, tactical thinking, the ability to face impossible odds without breaking. She stepped closer. You possess all of these things. I have seen you spend 14 hours straight repairing a life support system that every other technician said was unsalvageable. You succeeded because you refused to accept failure. That is the mate I want. That is the male I want my father to acknowledge. When does he want to do this test? Ethan asked, resignation creeping into his voice. Tomorrow evening. At the traditional combat circle in the Vorth Quarter. Of course it's combat, Ethan muttered. Why wouldn't it be combat? The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. Ethan tried to work, but his hands were shaky and his focus scattered. He kept thinking about Kira's words, about the connection they'd built over months of conversation and shared time. He thought about going home to his small quarters and pretending this wasn't happening. But the truth was, somewhere along the way, the silver-furred warrior had become the most important person in his life. As the station's evening cycle began, Ethan made his way to the Vorth Quarter. He'd been there before for repair jobs, but never this deep, never to the sacred combat circle that sat at the heart of their territory. The corridors here were wider, built to accommodate larger frames, and the lighting was dimmer, suited to Vorth eyes. A crowd had already gathered when Ethan arrived. Vorth of all ages lined the circular arena, their eyes glowing in the low light. At the center stood Pack Alpha Draven, and Ethan understood immediately why 17 challengers had failed. Draven was enormous even by Vorth standards, easily 8.5 feet tall with shoulders as broad as a cargo hauler. His fur was jet black with silver streaks that spoke of age and experience. Scars marked his body, each one a testament to battles won. His eyes were a deep gold, and when they locked onto Ethan, the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Kira stood beside her father, her posture rigid with tension. When she saw Ethan, relief flooded her features, as if part of her had believed he wouldn't come. Ethan walked into the circle, very aware of how small he looked compared to the towering Vorth surrounding him. The crowd murmured in confusion and disbelief. Some laughed. One young male called out an insult in the Vorth tongue that made several others bark with amusement. Draven's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence. He stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Ethan. You are the human mechanic. The one my daughter speaks of. Ethan met his stare without flinching. I am. You believe yourself worthy to mate with the daughter of a pack alpha? I believe your daughter is capable of choosing for herself. But I'm told you require testing. So here I am. A ripple of shock went through the crowd. No one spoke to Pack Alpha Draven with such casual disrespect. Draven's lips pulled back, revealing fangs that could tear through steel. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Probably both, Ethan admitted. But mostly I'm tired of watching Kira be treated like property instead of a person. The temperature in the circle seemed to plummet. Draven's ears flattened against his skull, a clear sign of rising aggression. You dare to insult pack traditions? I dare to point out that your daughter is a warrior in her own right. She leads your fighters in combat. She has earned respect. Yet you parade males before her like she has no say in her own life. That's not tradition. That's control. Kira's eyes widened in horror. The crowd was utterly silent now. No one, not even the highest-ranking warriors, challenged Draven so directly. Draven took a step forward, his massive frame seeming to fill the entire circle. His claws extended, scraping against the metal floor. You know nothing of our ways, human. Nothing of pack bonds, of bloodline honor, of a father's duty to protect his offspring. Ethan held his ground despite every instinct screaming at him to run. You're right. I don't know your ways. But I know fear when I see it. That stopped Draven cold. What did you say? You heard me. This isn't about tradition or honor or duty. This is about fear. You're terrified of losing your daughter. She's all you have left of your mate. So you make the tests impossible. You break every male who comes forward. Not because they're unworthy, but because no one could ever be worthy in your eyes. You'd rather keep her isolated than risk the pain of letting her go. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Draven's entire body was taut with rage, his fur standing on end. Several warriors in the crowd placed hands on weapons, certain they were about to witness the pack alpha tear the impudent human apart. But Draven didn't attack. Something shifted in his golden eyes, a flicker of recognition, of pain quickly suppressed. You presume much, mechanic. I presume nothing. Kira told me about her mother, about the partnership you shared, about how your mate was your equal in all things. You honor her memory by denying your daughter the same chance at happiness? Draven's claws retracted slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more dangerous. You think you understand loss? Ethan's jaw tightened. I understand that holding on too tight destroys what you're trying to protect. I've seen it 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways. Metal that won't flex breaks under pressure. Systems that don't adapt fail. People who can't let go lose everything. The pack alpha stared at him for a long moment. Then come, human. Let us see what you are made of. He gestured to the center of the circle. Ethan knew what was coming. He also knew he couldn't win a physical contest against a creature with 3 times his mass and built-in weapons. But Kira had said something important. The Vorth valued more than just brute strength. He walked to the center of the circle and turned to face Draven. The pack alpha's expression was unreadable. The first test is simple. Withstand my challenge for 60 seconds without fleeing or losing consciousness. Most do not manage 30. Before Ethan could respond, Draven threw back his head and roared. It was not a human sound, not even close. It was a primal scream of dominance, a sound evolved over millions of years to strike terror into prey and rivals alike. The acoustic force of it was physical, hitting Ethan like a wall of pressure. His bones vibrated with it. His ears rang. Every primitive part of his brain shrieked at him to run, to flee, to get away from the apex predator standing before him. Around the circle, younger Vorith instinctively took a step back. It was that powerful. Ethan's legs shook. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst. Sweat broke out across his skin. But he did not run. He did not fall. He stood there, meeting Draven's golden eyes, and weathered the storm. The roar lasted 20 seconds, an eternity that felt like hours. When it finally ended, Ethan was still standing. His ears were bleeding from the acoustic assault. His nose was bleeding too, but his feet hadn't moved an inch. Draven looked genuinely surprised. Impressive. Most species evacuate their bowels and flee within 10 seconds. You have more fortitude than expected. But fortitude alone does not make a worthy mate. He dropped into a combat stance. Now we test your ability to survive. Ethan knew he was about to be pummeled. There was no avoiding it. But as Draven lunged forward with terrifying speed, Ethan didn't try to fight back. Instead, he dropped and rolled, using his smaller size to slip under the massive Vorth's attack. He came up several feet away, breathing hard. Running will only prolong the inevitable, Draven growled. Not running. Surviving. There's a difference. Draven attacked again, faster this time, but Ethan was already moving. He couldn't match the Vorth's strength or speed in a straight contest, but he could be unpredictable. He used the environment, rolling behind support pillars, ducking under swipes that would have decapitated him, staying just out of reach. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to not lose. The crowd watched in fascination as this strange dance continued. The tiny human, prey species by any reasonable measure, was somehow staying ahead of Pack Alpha Draven's attacks. Not through superior combat skill, but through sheer stubbornness and tactical adaptation. Draven began to change his approach. He stopped trying to overwhelm Ethan with raw power and started trying to corner him, to limit his options. It was the shift from berserker to strategist, and it was much more dangerous. Ethan felt the net closing. He was tiring, his human endurance no match for Vorth's stamina. His lungs burned. His muscles screamed. He was running out of space and options. So he stopped running. When Draven lunged again, Ethan didn't dodge. Instead, he dropped flat and rolled directly toward the Pack Alpha, getting inside his reach. Draven's claws whistled over his head, missing by inches. Before the massive Vorth could adjust, Ethan was on his feet directly in front of him, close enough to smell the predator's breath. For a frozen moment, they stared at each other. Ethan was completely vulnerable, within easy killing range. One swipe of those claws would end it all. You could kill me right now, Ethan said quietly, his voice somehow carrying in the silent circle. Is that what you want? To prove you're stronger than a human mechanic? Everyone already knows that. You've proven nothing except that you can terrorize someone a third your size. Draven's claws hovered in the air, trembling with restrained violence. Why do you not defend yourself? Because this isn't about fighting. Ethan met his eyes without fear. This is about you deciding whether your fear is more important than your daughter's happiness. Kill me, and you prove I was right. You're too afraid to let her choose. Let me live. Test me in ways that actually matter, and maybe you'll see what she sees in me. The Pack Alpha's claws slowly retracted. He stepped back, his expression unreadable. You would trust your life to my restraint? I'm trusting my life to your love for your daughter. Kira said you and her mother had a partnership built on respect. If that's true, then you understand what she wants. What she needs. Someone who won't bow, won't break, won't run. Someone who will stand beside her as an equal, even when it's terrifying. Draven was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. My mate was like you. Small by our standards. Soft where we are hard. But her will was iron. She challenged me when others cowered. She made me a better alpha because she refused to accept anything less than my best. His eyes flicked to Kira, standing at the edge of the circle with tears streaming down her face. When she died, I swore no male would ever be worthy of our daughter, because none could match the strength my mate possessed. You're right, Ethan said. No one can replace your mate. No one should try. But Kira doesn't need a replacement for her mother. She needs a partner for herself. Draven's shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of years of grief visible in his posture. You are either the bravest or the most foolish being I have ever met, human. You said that already. A sound escaped Draven's throat, something between a growl and a laugh. You do not even fear me now, do you? Oh, I'm terrified. Ethan wiped blood from his nose. You could literally tear me apart with your bare hands. But fear doesn't change what's right. And it's right for Kira to make her own choice. Draven looked at his daughter, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time since his mate's death. He saw not the child he wanted to protect, but the warrior she had become. Strong, capable, and desperately in love with this impossible, stubborn human. Kira, Draven said, his voice carrying across the circle. Is this the male you choose? Kira stepped forward, her posture straight and proud. Yes, father. He is. He is weak by our standards. He stood before you and didn't run. How many of your warriors could say the same? He cannot hunt. He fixes what is broken. He solves impossible problems. These are not lesser skills. He will not live as long as a Vorith mate would. Kira's voice softened. Then I will treasure every moment I have with him. Draven closed his eyes, a shuddering breath escaping him. When he opened them again, they glistened with moisture. Your mother would have liked him. She always preferred those with sharp tongues and sharper minds. He turned back to Ethan. You have not passed my tests, human. You have failed them spectacularly. You cannot match my strength. You barely survived my challenge roar. In a true combat trial, you would be dead within seconds. Ethan said nothing, waiting. But you have done something none of the others did. You made me see my daughter again instead of the ghost of my mate. You faced certain death and used it to speak truth instead of begging for mercy. You are either extraordinarily brave or completely insane. He paused. Likely both. Draven stepped forward and placed one massive paw on Ethan's shoulder. The weight of it nearly buckled his knees. The human mechanic has my acknowledgement. Let the pack witness. He is not Vorith. He will never be Vorith. But he possesses the spirit we honor. If my daughter chooses him, I will not stand in her way. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, celebrating the unprecedented decision. Others growled in disapproval, shocked that their pack alpha would accept an off-worlder, a human, as a mate for his only daughter. But Draven's word was law, and none would challenge it directly. Kira rushed into the circle, and Ethan barely had time to brace himself before she swept him into an embrace that lifted him completely off the ground. She was careful with her strength, mindful of his fragile human frame, but her joy was unmistakable. You magnificent fool, she whispered in his ear. You could have died. Probably should have, Ethan admitted, his voice strained because she was squeezing the air from his lungs. Your father is terrifying. She set him down gently, her eyes shining. You stood before the pack alpha and made him submit. Not through strength, but through truth. That is the most Vorith thing I have ever seen a non-Vorith do. Draven watched them with an expression that mixed grief and acceptance. There are conditions, he announced, his voice cutting through the celebration. The human will learn our ways. He will understand pack law, combat hierarchy, and the responsibilities that come with mating into the alpha bloodline. He will be tested not once, but continuously. And if he ever harms my daughter, I will hunt him across the galaxy and demonstrate why I became pack alpha in the first place. Understood, Ethan said, because what else could he say? Good. Draven's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Now get out of my sight before I remember my pride and change my mind. Kira pulled Ethan toward the exit, moving quickly before her father could reconsider. The crowd parted before them, Vorith warriors staring at the unlikely pair with mixtures of respect, confusion, and amusement. As they left the combat circle, Ethan heard one older warrior mutter to another that perhaps the pack alpha had finally lost his mind in his grief. But another warrior, scarred and grizzled, shook her head. No, he finally found it again. Back in the familiar territory of Maintenance Base 7, Ethan collapsed onto his workbench, his body finally acknowledging all the abuse it had endured. His ears still rang from Draven's challenge roar. His muscles ached from the constant dodging and rolling. His hands shook with residual adrenaline. Kira sat beside him, her tail wrapping around his waist in a gesture of affection and protection. You were incredible. I was out of my mind, Ethan corrected. I should be dead right now. But you are not. You stood before my father and made him see reason. Made him see me. She rested her head on his shoulder, careful not to put too much weight on him. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Ethan thought about Draven's eyes, about the grief and fear and love all mixed together. He's not a bad father. He's just been drowning in loss and didn't know how to let go. He knows now, because you showed him. She was quiet for a moment. Ethan, you understand this changes everything? Mating into an alpha bloodline comes with responsibilities. Expectations. I figured. What exactly am I in for? Kira lifted her head, considering. You will be expected to attend pack gatherings, to learn our customs and traditions, to understand the complex hierarchy of Vorith society. And you will be tested constantly by other males who will see you as a weak point in the alpha bloodline. Sounds exhausting. It will be, but you will not face it alone. I will be beside you, and my father, despite his gruff exterior, will honor his word. You have his acknowledgement. That is not a small thing. Ethan looked at her, at the silver-white fur, the amber eyes, the fangs that could rend steel. She was alien in every possible way, and yet she was also the person who understood him better than anyone ever had. What about you? What do you get out of this arrangement besides a mate who can't hunt and gets winded climbing stairs? Kira's fanged smile was genuine and warm. I get a partner who sees me for who I am, not what I represent. I get someone who will challenge me intellectually, who will argue with me when I am wrong, who will not be intimidated by my father or my bloodline or my position. She leaned in close, her breath warm against his ear. I get you, Ethan Cole. That is more than enough. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the familiar sounds of the maintenance bay humming around them. Ethan's mind was already racing ahead, thinking about the challenges to come. Learning Vorith customs would be difficult. Navigating pack politics would be even harder. And he had no illusions about the reception he'd receive from traditionalists who saw him as an outsider corrupting their bloodline. But he'd faced down Pack Alpha Draven and survived. Compared to that, everything else seemed manageable. So what happens now? Ethan finally asked. Kira stood, pulling him to his feet with gentle strength. Now we celebrate. The pack will hold a feast to honor my father's acknowledgement. You will be formally introduced as my chosen mate. She paused, a hint of mischief in her eyes. And you will discover that Vorith celebrations involve significant amounts of fermented meat wine and ritual combat displays. Of course they do. You will also meet the rest of my family. My uncles, my cousins, my father's most trusted warriors. They will all want to assess you, to determine if you are truly worthy. More tests? Always more tests. Kira's expression turned serious. But Ethan, understand this. By accepting my father's acknowledgement, you have entered into something sacred in Vorith culture. You are not just choosing me as a mate. You are becoming part of the pack. That bond is unbreakable. Ethan thought about his life before. The solitary existence in Maintenance Bay 7. The endless parade of broken equipment and indifferent clients. The loneliness of being one of the few humans on a frontier station where everyone else had their own species groups and cultural connections. Then he thought about Kira, about their conversations, their growing connection, the way she challenged him and supported him in equal measure. Unbreakable sounds good, he said. The feast was held in the great hall of the Vorith Quarter, a massive space with high ceilings and dim lighting that suited their vision. Long tables were laden with food, most of it uncooked meat that made Ethan's stomach turn. But there were also cooked dishes, prepared specifically for him after Kira had quietly informed the feastmaster that her human mate could not consume raw flesh. Ethan found himself seated at the head table, positioned between Kira and her father. It was a place of honor that made him acutely aware of every eye in the hall watching him. Draven stood, and the hall fell silent immediately. Pack, he began, his voice carrying to every corner of the space. Tonight we honor an unprecedented decision. My daughter has chosen her mate. A human, an off-worlder, one who could not pass our traditional trials of strength. There were murmurs at this, not all of them approving. But he passed a trial far more difficult. He faced certain death and did not run. He spoke truth to power and did not break. He showed me what I had become in my grief. A father so afraid of losing his daughter that he was destroying her chance at happiness. Draven's voice roughened with emotion. My mate would have been ashamed of me. She always said that love without trust is just another form of control. He placed his massive paw on Ethan's shoulder, and this time Ethan managed to stay upright under the weight. The human mechanic, Ethan Cole has my acknowledgement. Let all hear witness. He is packed now. Any who challenge him challenge me. The hall erupted in a mixture of cheers and stunned silence. It was one thing to allow the mating. It was entirely another to grant pack membership to an alien, especially one so physically weak by Vorth standards. But Draven's word was absolute, and those who might have protested held their tongues. The feast that followed was chaotic and overwhelming. Vorth warriors approached in waves, some to offer congratulations, others to size up the human who had somehow captured the Alpha's daughter. Ethan fielded questions about human culture, about Earth, about how he planned to contribute to the pack when he couldn't hunt or fight. He answered honestly, explaining his work as a mechanic, his approach to problem-solving, his belief that strength came in many forms. Some warriors seemed satisfied by this. Others remained skeptical. A particularly large male named Torin, one of Draven's lieutenants, approached with barely concealed hostility. You are small, soft, and weak. What happens when the pack needs defending? When enemies attack, will you hide while Vorth blood is spilled? Ethan met his glare steadily. If the pack is attacked, I'll do what I'm good at. I'll make sure your weapons work, your armor holds, your ships fly. I'll keep the systems running that keep you alive. I can't fight like you can, but I can make sure you have every advantage when you do fight. Torin's ears flattened. That is not a warrior's answer. No, it's an engineer's answer. Wars aren't just won by those who pull the trigger. They're won by those who make sure the trigger works. A bark of laughter came from nearby. An older female warrior with a face full of scars stepped forward. The human speaks truth, Torin. Remember the Battle of Kelvin Station? Half our weapons failed because no one had maintained them properly. We won, but we lost good warriors because of faulty equipment. She fixed Ethan with a sharp look. Can you truly keep complex weapons systems operational under combat conditions? That's literally what I do every day. Half the equipment on this station would be scrap without proper maintenance. Under combat conditions it's harder, but yes, I can manage it. The scarred warrior nodded slowly. Then perhaps you are not as useless as you appear, human. She touched her fist to her chest in a Vorth salute. I am Mara, third to the pack Alpha. Welcome to the pack, engineer. It was a small victory, but Ethan felt some of the tension in the hall ease. Not everyone would accept him readily, but at least some could see past their initial prejudices. As the feast wore on, Ethan watched the Vorth engage in their ritual combat displays. These were not serious fights, but demonstrations of skill and strength, warriors showing off for their packmates. The displays were impressive, full of speed and power that would have been lethal in a real battle. Kira leaned close to him, her voice low. You will be expected to demonstrate your own skills eventually. Not combat, but whatever you believe shows your value to the pack. Ethan considered this. What would impress a warrior culture? Not his ability to fix a broken plasma coupling, that was certain. It needed to be something that translated to their values. Something that showed strength in a way they could understand. An idea began to form. 3 days later, Ethan stood in the training arena, surrounded by curious Vorth. Word had spread that the human mate was going to demonstrate his skills, and pack members had gathered to see what the strange off-worlder could possibly show them. Draven sat in the observer's position, his expression skeptical. Beside him, Kira looked nervous but supportive. Ethan had spent the past 3 days preparing. He'd requisitioned materials, built custom components, and assembled something he hoped would make his point. Before the gathered pack, he had set up 6 combat drones. They were training models, designed to simulate enemy combatants with non-lethal weapons. Each drone was programmed with combat algorithms pulled from Vorth military databases. Ethan stood in the center of the arena, wearing his usual grease-stained coveralls, holding a simple datapad. To his left were 6 piles of components, weapons, armor pieces, and mechanical parts. The challenge is simple, he announced, his voice carrying in the arena. The drones will attack in waves. I can't fight them myself. I'm not fast enough, strong enough, or trained for combat. But I can do something else. He activated the first drone. It shot forward with terrifying speed, its weapons armed with stunning charges. Before it could reach him, Ethan had already activated a defense turret he'd assembled from the component pile. The turret tracked and disabled the drone in seconds. The second wave was 2 drones simultaneously. Ethan deployed a shield generator and an EMP mine in quick succession, neutralizing both threats before they got within striking range. The demonstrations continued, each wave more difficult, each solution more complex. Ethan moved with practiced efficiency, assembling defensive systems, activating countermeasures, reprogramming capture drones to fight for him instead of against him. His hands flew over components, his mind working several steps ahead, turning the raw materials around him into an adaptive defensive network. By the sixth wave, he had created a small fortress of interconnected systems that worked together to neutralize threats automatically. The final drones didn't even get close. Ethan shut down the demonstration and turned to face the pack. This is what I bring. In your culture, individual combat skill is honored. In mine, we learned that intelligence and preparation can overcome superior physical strength. I can't fight like you can, but I can build the tools that make your fights easier. I can create advantages where none existed. I can turn a losing battle into a winning one through technology and strategy. He locked eyes with Draven. You said wars are won by warriors. You're right. But warriors need weapons, armor, ships, defenses. Someone has to build those things. Someone has to maintain them. Someone has to innovate when the old solutions stop working. That's my strength. That's what I offer the pack. The arena was silent. Then Mara, the scarred warrior, began to bark in approval, the Vorith equivalent of applause. Others joined her, the sound building until the entire arena echoed with it. Draven stood, his expression unreadable. He approached Ethan slowly, each step deliberate. When he reached the human, he stared down at him for a long moment. Then he touched his fist to his chest, the full salute of respect. You are Pack, engineer. Let no one question it again. The acceptance didn't happen overnight. There were still those who muttered about traditions being broken, about bloodlines being diluted. But gradually, Ethan found his place within the pack structure. He established a workshop in the Vorith Quarter, a space where he could maintain and upgrade their equipment. Warriors began bringing him their weapons and armor, initially with skepticism, but increasingly with trust as they saw the improvements he could make. He taught several younger Vorith the basics of engineering and maintenance, skills they had previously considered beneath warrior caste. To his surprise, several showed real aptitude, including a young male named Kryn who had a natural understanding of complex systems. You have a gift for this, Ethan told him one day as they worked on a malfunctioning energy shield. Kryn's ears flattened in embarrassment. My father says I should focus on combat training, that I waste time with machines. Your father is wrong. Ethan didn't look up from his work. A warrior who understands his equipment is twice as effective as one who doesn't. Keep learning. The pack needs engineers as much as it needs fighters. Word of this conversation reached Draven, who summoned Ethan to his private chambers. The pack alpha's quarters were sparse but functional, decorated with weapons and trophies from past battles. You told Kryn to disobey his father's wishes, Draven said, his tone neutral. I told him he had talent and should develop it. If his father has a problem with that, he can take it up with me. Draven's lips twitched, almost a smile. You grow bold, human. You gave me pack membership. That means I have a responsibility to the pack's future. Kryn has skills we need. Forcing him into a role he's not suited for weakens everyone. The pack alpha was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. My mate used to say similar things. That every pack member should serve according to their strengths, not just tradition. She believed in adaptation. He looked at Ethan with something like approval. You remind me of her more each day. It is both comforting and painful. I'm sorry for your loss. Do not be sorry. Be worthy of my daughter. That is the best way to honor my mate's memory. As months passed, Ethan and Kira settled into their partnership. They faced challenges neither had anticipated. The biological incompatibility meant they could never have offspring, a source of quiet grief for Kira who had hoped to continue her bloodline. But they found other ways to build a future together. They adopted a human orphan from a transport crash, a girl named Maya who had lost her parents and desperately needed a family. Then they took in a young Vorith male whose pack had been destroyed in a border conflict. The unlikely family unit became a symbol of the changing pack, of adaptation and acceptance. Ethan continued to work his engineering miracles. When a plague ship threatened the station, he designed a filtration system that saved thousands of lives. When pirates attacked, his defensive innovations helped the Vorith warriors repel them with minimal casualties. His reputation grew, not just within the pack, but across the station. Other species began seeking him out, not just for repairs but for custom solutions to complex problems. His workshop became a hub of activity, a place where technology and innovation flourished. Draven watched all of this with paternal pride that he rarely expressed, but everyone could see. The once fierce Pack Alpha had mellowed somewhat, though he would never admit it. He spent time with his adopted grandchildren, teaching them combat and strategy, while Ethan taught them engineering and problem-solving. One evening, 2 years after that fateful test in the combat circle, Ethan found himself alone with Draven in the workshop. They were working together on a new weapons system, the Pack Alpha surprisingly adept at following technical instructions. "You have changed the pack," Draven said without preamble. "Many of the old ways are fading." "Is that a complaint?" "An observation. The younger generation sees you as proof that strength comes in many forms. They question traditions they once accepted without thought." "Is that bad?" Draven set down the component he was holding. "My mate asked me similar questions before she died. She believed the Vorith would either adapt or fade into irrelevance. Too rigid, too focused on past glories." He met Ethan's eyes. "I did not want to hear it then. I was Pack Alpha. I knew best. But she was right. She was always right." "Change is hard," Ethan said quietly. "Especially when it feels like you're losing what made you who you are. We are not losing what makes us Vorith. We are becoming more. Warriors who understand their tools. Engineers who appreciate combat strategy. A pack that values innovation as much as tradition." Draven's voice softened. "You did not just win my daughter, human. You won the future of our pack. I just fixed broken things. That's all I ever did. Sometimes fixing broken things means fixing broken thinking." Draven placed a heavy paw on Ethan's shoulder, and this time it felt like acceptance rather than challenge. "My mate would have loved you. She would have seen what I was too blind to see. That you were exactly what our daughter needed. What our pack needed." "Thank you," Ethan said, genuinely moved. "That means more than you know. Do not let it go to your head. You are still small, weak, and incapable of proper hunting. But you are pack, and that is enough." It was the closest thing to a declaration of love Draven would ever give, and Ethan understood it perfectly. Later that night, Ethan lay beside Kira in their quarters, her larger form curled protectively around his smaller one. Maya and young Torin were asleep in the adjacent room, their breathing steady and peaceful. "Do you ever regret it?" Kira asked softly. "Taking on all of this? The pack politics, the adoption, the constant pressure to prove yourself?" Ethan thought about his old life, the isolation, the emptiness. Then he thought about everything he had now. A partner who challenged and supported him. Children who looked at him with love and admiration. A community that had accepted him despite every reason not to. "Not for a second," he said. Kira nuzzled against him, careful of her fangs. "My father spoke with me today. He said the pack elders are considering creating a new position. Pack engineer, with status equal to the warrior caste." Ethan's eyes widened. "That's a huge change. You have earned it. Your innovations have saved countless lives. Your teachings have created a new generation that values knowledge as much as combat prowess." She paused. "You made my father see that strength without intelligence is merely brute force, and intelligence without courage is merely theory. Together, they create something greater." "I had a good teacher," Ethan said, squeezing her paw gently. They lay in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the station humming around them. In the distance, Ethan could hear the rhythmic chanting of Vorith warriors in evening meditation, a sound that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. "Kira," he said eventually, "when I stood in that combat circle, when your father roared at me and I thought I might actually die, I realized something." "What?" "That some things are worth being terrified for. Some people are worth facing impossible odds. You were worth all of it." She tightened her embrace just slightly, mindful of his fragile human frame. "And you, Ethan Cole, were worth defying every tradition, every expectation, every voice that said I should choose a Vorith mate. You are my partner in all things. My equal. My love." In the morning, Ethan would return to his workshop. He would continue teaching, continue innovating, continue proving that strength came in many forms. He would attend pack gatherings, navigate complex politics, and slowly cement his place in Vorth's society. But for now, wrapped in the embrace of the warrior who had chosen him, surrounded by the family they had built together, Ethan Cole, the human mechanic who had made a pack alpha submit through truth and courage rather than strength, was simply content. The pack had tested him and found him worthy, not because he could match their physical strength, but because he possessed something rarer: the courage to stand by his convictions, the intelligence to adapt to impossible situations, and the stubborn determination to never give up on what mattered. He had come to Outpost 17 as a lonely mechanic, fixing broken machines and avoiding attention. He had found something he never expected: a home, a family, and a love that transcended species and culture. And in the end, that was worth every terrifying moment. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and unknowns. The pack would continue to evolve, blending tradition with innovation. Their children would grow up in a world where a human could stand beside a Vorth as an equal. Other packs would hear the story of Pack Alpha Draven's daughter and her human mate, and some would follow their example. Change had come to the Vorth, carried on the greasy hands of a mechanic who refused to run, who spoke truth to power, and who believed that love and acceptance were stronger than any tradition. It was a change that would echo across the stars, proving once again that humanity's greatest strength was not in physical prowess or advanced technology, but in the stubborn refusal to accept that impossible meant forever. Ethan Cole had walked into that combat circle expecting to fail, perhaps expecting to die. Instead, he had started a revolution, one bolt, one conversation, one act of courage at a time. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.